Welcome to the Midlife Men podcast with me, Philip Briscoe. On today's episode, I'm joined by Gary Jader. Gary spent his life in business and in mental health care, but his real mission now is simple: getting men to talk openly, honestly, and without bravado about what really matters. So welcome, Gary.
Thank you, Philip. And thank you for your podcast, by the way. I love it. You do exactly what I'm trying to do with this book, is, allow men to talk openly.
Excellent. Good. Well, I've obviously got the right guest, the right show there. So before we talk about the book and everything else you've been doing, perhaps you could talk a bit about what life was like growing up for you, because I think it always helps for people listening to kind of connect to the guests that I have and just understand a bit more about what makes them tick. What's kind of put them on the path they've taken in life.
Yeah, I grew up fairly poor, 7 kids, small house, a lot of conflict, a lot of fighting, both physically and verbally. My great mom, wonderful, loving mother. Dad was hardworking, verbally abusive. So, when I look at, for me, much of what has driven me, he would call all of us, but he seemed to really enjoy picking on me for some reason, and calling me stupid and dumb and an idiot and you're blah blah. And I think, Philip, the wisdom, the little wisdom I have is to look backwards. And so I look at my life and, college wasn't, there were no books in our house. College wasn't even really talked about much. And I went to college, and then I went back to college, and then I went back to college. And I think I've read every self-help book ever written, trying to fix myself, until I finally realized I was okay. But I think that's, and I taught graduate school for 17 years. And I think a lot of it is just to prove my dad wrong. I think the other kids in my family didn't choose that path. But I think, that's a thing about, when you grow up with, like for me, an verbally abusive father, there's some good things that happen from it. It's not all bad. I've really contributed a lot. Now, the downside is, I'm not easy to live with. Just ask my wife. So anyway, but there are there's some good things about it. Now, the costs for me personally have been great, and like I said, the people around me.
And was there a point then where you thought, do you know what? I'm not going to try and prove my dad wrong. I'm doing this all for myself. Was there a kind of tipping point where you're like, you know what, this is for me now?
No, I think I still am doing it. I wish that there was like a magic moment, but one of the things that I, at least at my age, I've come to realize is the things about you, the things about me, whatever it is, whatever you consider your flaws, your imperfections, they don't change much. I think maybe I'm more aware, but I still work long hours. I can't. I tried to retire and I couldn't do it. So how do we learn to dance with our imperfections? I think I'm a little better. My wife would tell you that I'm better than I used to be, after many years of marriage. So, there was no sort of magic moment where all of a sudden I said, "Oh, I'm not an idiot. Uh, I'm actually kind of smart."
Do you think it drove you to, work harder or achieve more? Do you think that was part of it, part of the drivers, or do you think, you would have gone that route anyway?
No, I think it was a big part of it, Philip. I think, and that's the other thing. It's not like I'm thinking, oh, I'm not an idiot. I'm not an idiot. I'm not stupid. I'm not dumb. But I think when I look at my behavior and sort of back into it, I see a lot of what I continue to do is driven by proving to the world how smart I am.
And so you have worked in kind of the healthcare sector and with mental health. So why did you decide to kind of go into that area? Was it based on the sort of experience that you'd had firsthand?
Yeah, and you probably more aware even than I am of the data of what the level of anxiety and depression are. In this country, we reckon that it's about 20% of Americans really struggle with anxiety and depression. And they just don't get care. Like maybe 1 out of 4 people who need care get it. So I was an advisor to the CEO of this mental health care company, and he said, I need you to come on board. We're growing. The needs are great. So
Why is that? Why are 20% of the population in the US, and it's probably very similar in the UK actually. Why is that? Why are men finding it so difficult to open up about how they feel? And I know just to be clear, mental health is not it doesn't just affect men, it's any gender, any age, any socioeconomic bracket. But why do you think men in particular find it difficult to open up?
oh boy, I don't.
Sorry, big question, isn't it? Let's take it in small chunks.
It's a great question. Why? I don't know. Let me, if I may, tell you a very quick story, which was revelatory for me. Okay, so I was attending a Unitarian church for 3 years, and there was a men's group, and the first men's group, there was about 12 of us. And this is an upscale church in an upscale neighborhood, and it's all a bunch of educated white guys sitting around the table, right? So, and was facilitated by a psychologist and a really smart guy. And we're going around, and people are sharing things, and I'm not talking. I was abused, by my none of that. One guy, for example, said, "Oh, my daughter just got accepted to Harvard, and I don't know how to talk to people about it without sounding like I'm bragging." Okay, so it was that level of depth. Now, at the end, the facilitator went around and asked all 12 guys, "What was this like?" Philip, half of the guys said they felt safe. And it was like this, it was such a revelation. It's safe? Are you effing kidding me? Safe? Men jump out of airplanes, go to battle, get in the ring and slug each other to death. Football, they dive for balls. And you're in a conversation with 11 other guys in an upscale church and you feel safe. What the hell is going on? So it was a big aha for me. I don't know why. I have no idea why. I'll talk to just about anybody about just about anything. And so it was a big aha for me how hard it is for guys to talk. And why? It's complicated question. I think it's how we're raised. I think it's our coaches. I think it's our teachers. It's our parents. Just shut up, man up. I mean, don't you think? I mean, I think that's it. The messages are from everyone not to do what we want men to do, is to talk.
And the current environment that we're living in, political, economic, global, do you think, this is a leading question, do you think that supports that environment, that kind of openness, honesty, allowing men to, breathe a bit, actually, acknowledge who they are?
Yeah, I do. Especially in the US right now, and this isn't going to be a Trump bash, because Trump is just busy being Trump. And America created Trump. We can't blame Trump, really. But what I love about Trump is that he's a symbol for me of what's wrong with us, myself included, men, right? So he's all about exaggerating. He's all about puffery. He's all about really lying. He lied 30,000 times in his last 4 years. You know, I just don't think that's healthy for us. I think it leads to, oh, it's just not healthy, and I think, and that's what you do. I think you do on your podcast. And that's what I'm trying to do with this book is your imperfections are okay. How do we, I feel not enough, right? So I feel inadequate. It's okay. I'm still alive. I'm still a contributing, healthy member of our society, walking around with my feelings of inadequacy. It's okay. And so what I'm hoping, Philip, is that this book will help men maybe provide a blueprint for being honest and to be open and to be authentic, and to do it in a masculine way, by the way. I think openness, emotionally, just openness. Women do it differently. What I'm suggesting, what I'm hoping for, is that men take the courage, the strength that they bring into battle and into work, and use it for themselves. I mean, use it on themselves. Use that courage that we have to talk openly about shit, that's going on.
So, but there needs to be kind of guidance, I think, because it doesn't come naturally, or maybe it does, but it's so repressed and hidden that it does need guidance. It needs people like you to help men find a way of taking their masculinity and merging it with this kind of vulnerability, and as you said, doing it in a very masculine way. But how what's your experience of helping men kind of unlock themselves a bit?
I was thinking about that, Philip. The book I wrote in partnership with, well, he's now 91 years old, but a master carpenter. I mean, this guy is a trades guy. And for 15 years, every Sunday, he comes to our home, drives here, by the way. And between 9:30 and noon, we have open conversations. And I was thinking about that because I thought, well, how do I help men do what you're asking? How do I help them? And so I look back and I take notes, right? All those 15 years of conversations. And I thought, well, what's the structure? What do we do? And there is no structure. So I look back and I thought, well, what the hell do we talk about? So we don't talk about worldly matters much. We talk about two things. What has our week been like? What are we happy about? What are we proud of? And where did we fuck up? And there's always something in each category. And so maybe it's, and I shared this with you before, but we all know we're going to die, right? Everybody that's listening knows that in their head. But about a month ago, I felt my death. I mean, I felt it. I think I was reading this book called Dying with Zero, which is a really cool book. And it talks about how many of us go to our grave and there's a lot of money and we never took trips. We never went on that trip. So maybe it was that, but I just felt so heavy and so down. And so I talked to Russ about that. I talked to my wife about it. I talked to my kids about it. My wife gives me shit because, Gary, I don't think the FedEx guy really cares about your feelings about death. But it helps me, Philip. It helps me to talk. Just to talk to. Oh, I've got to tell you. So last week, I'm out. I live near the St. Croix River here in the Midwest, and we're on a pontoon. And I have two friends who are both attorneys. And the woman worked for the same big law firm for 27 years. And she told me about a story where she was working late, burning the midnight oil, right? And there's two people that are there. It's late at night. And the guy comes into her office, and he's in his socking feet, and he's working late, blah, blah, blah. He said, do you mind if I share something with you? No, it's fine. And he tells her that he was sexually abused by a teenage babysitter who threatened the family. And so this went on for quite some time. Philip, this is a guy who's a successful litigator, a guy with a wife and kids and a big-ass career. He never had told anyone about that. And he said, to be honest, I've been on Facebook. I know who this guy is, and I've envisioned killing him. Well, this is a dramatic example, right? But this is what happens. This guy has never told anybody. Anybody. I, I, we have to stop this. We have to, create spaces like this podcast, where men come on and can talk about bullying, and they can talk about their anger issues. And
where do they take it from there then? Because in the example you gave, this guy's obviously been carrying this around, a weight, around his neck for his whole life. And he told, a colleague rather randomly. But what do men do then? Because maybe is that because he couldn't find or wasn't aware of a safe space? I mean, there are lots of organisations which you can find quite easily that you can go to, and you can, it's a men's meeting group, for want of a better word, and there are people there that can help, and it's there's trust, and it's designed for men just like that. Plus, and we should also just say that a lot of times professional help is required. Go to your doctor, especially if you're having thoughts of suicidal ideation, that sort of thing. So what do these men do next?
Oh boy, so many great questions involved in that, right? Because, and you say this on your podcast. I mean, and I've been in the business of mental health care, so that's a different thing, right? So I consider myself a normal neurotic. And so a lot of what my book really talks about is those of us who, have anxiety, mild anxiety, but they're not mentally ill. So, they're a separate thing. One of the things that I said to this attorney, I said, did you happen to... So one of the things this guy said, who told the story about being sexually abused, is he said, I feel better. So I said, well, he needs to tell more people then. I mean, if it felt good once, why don't you keep telling people? And I think somehow, and I'm not a therapist or a psychiatrist, somehow I've discovered, Philip, that if I talk about this whole thing about death, I don't have the problem anymore. I just talk. It just goes. It's magic. So I think, whether it's a mate that you go out and have a pint with, or you're in a men's group or a book club or something, try. And listen, it's not easy. I know that. But talk about something that's going on for you that maybe isn't working well. Well, what are you struggling with?
And I guess this is where, guys that are friends, there's a responsibility really to look out for each other. And I should say, though, that you do need to be careful about who you talk to, right? I mean, we're not saying just tell anyone you meet in the street. It has to be a safe environment, because you don't want it to cause more problems than it fixes, right? But so what you're saying is, look, just have just take the, it may require a lot of courage, but just choose the right person, the right moment, or the right group, and go and do it. And what's the worst that can happen?
Yeah, that's a great distinction. I'm anomalous. I mean, I'm a weird dude. I I I know most people aren't like me, but I can tell you that it helps. What's interesting, I have to share one thing with you, Philip. So this is going back about 2 months ago. I was at a friend's cabin in Minnesota. In this part of the country, people have cabins, right, on lakes. And well, this guy in my high school class, which goes back quite a few years, he for years has been inviting guys up to his cabin for a guy's sort of day out, right? Put steaks on the barbie and drink beer. And anyway, we're sitting around. There's 12 of us. We're sitting around. And I'm thinking, Jader, you wrote a book about this. Why don't you ask these guys some questions that have some depth? So I thought, why don't I ask these guys, when you look back on your life, what are you proud of? And what kinds of things is there anything you regret in your long life? I didn't do it. I just sat there. I did not have the courage to do what I'm asking men to do. So no, I completely get what I'm asking is not easy. I just think we need it. We really need it. And and I wish there was a 10-point program or our book. This book was an instruction manual or even a self-help. It's just, really two guys talking about life's thorniest issues, and living to tell about it.
The book's called Cracked Open.
Yes.
And you wrote this, I guess, through your conversations with Ross, through this relationship you've had for a very long time. So what does being cracked open mean to you personally?
Well, there's two things. One is, and I'm sure if all the men that are listening to this were totally honest, they have days when emotions are closer to the surface than other days. And I don't know why, but some days I can watch somebody helping an old woman across the street and well up, or somebody lets me merge on the highway and, tears are just and I joke with my wife. It's like, I'm really cracked open today. So personally, that's how my wife and I talk. And also there's a great song by Leonard Cohen called Anthem. And in it, he writes, everything is cracked open. That's how the light gets in. And that was such a simple, but it was so powerful. Yes, cracked open is okay. It's how the light gets in.
That's a great way of expressing it. So you've got to know Russ for many, many years. Tell me a bit. I mean, he's not here, but today. But tell me about him and about why you decided to write this book. With almost not on behalf of him, but about him.
Yeah. Well, he fascinated me. Okay, so this is a master carpenter, old world carpenter, right? In the UK, there's a bunch of them. There's no corner that's square enough. Everything has to be perfectly aligned. He's amazing. Now, one of the things that intrigued me about him is that he belongs to an organization called Emotions Anonymous. I'm sure you probably have it in the UK. It's all based on Alcoholics Anonymous 12-step program. He has belonged to this organization for 50 years, goes every Tuesday. And I thought, this is interesting. Here's a tradesman, right? He barely finished high school, no education. He never reads. He's dyslexic. He has a hard time with words. But he's interested enough in his emotional life and his out of control anger and his insecurity and his shame and and he just fascinated me. And he'll say he has 5 kids and he was one of the worst fathers ever. And he still struggles with his relationship with his kids and really negative. And he was just so honest. So I wrote a book called The Carpenter King and the Professor. And this was many years ago. Nobody bought it. Um, and I finally realized, Philip, is that this guy is dyslexic. And so I tried to write a book, but he didn't talk much. And so even after the book was published, we continue to meet every Sunday. And I, I had this idea. I think it's because I use AI in my work, right? So I'm a marketing guy. And so market research, I used AI for a lot, for planning, for documents. And I had this crazy idea. What if I invited AI to give voice to this guy who can't give voice himself? So I literally invited AI to participate in our Sunday conversations. And I would enter his wisdom as a prompt into ChatGPT, and then it would riff on it. And I thought, oh, this is good. Russ loved it. He loves AI's writing way more than mine. So, but it did such a great job, Philip, of capturing this old guy's wisdom. So that the whole book is really about life's thorniest issues, right? Feeling not enough, feeling inadequate, like, my stuff. It could be out of the control issue.
What just going back to Emotions Anonymous. So I've not heard of that. It may exist in the UK, but I'm not sure it does actually. Can you just tell us a bit more about what it is and what it what does it do for men?
Yeah,
or anyone?
it's, and I'm sure Alcoholics Anonymous.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's very present, but I've not heard, and maybe it does exist. I just don't know about it. But I think people listening might not know what it is either.
yeah, it's all based on a 12-step program. Where you really admit you're powerless over your drink, and you go every Tuesday and you meet with other people who have out of control anxiety, out of control depression. Yeah, and they just it's a space, it's a safe space you mentioned earlier for people to show up once a week with other people who struggle with out of control emotions. And there's a 12 steps that you go through.
So the book that you wrote with Russ and AI, is that, how do people get hold of that if they want to read it?
Well, they can read a few chapters for free. I made the book is not on the market yet. We'll have it on Amazon within the next few weeks. Right now, if they go to www.crackedopenproject.com, they can read a few chapters, take a look at it. But our hope is that it will be available within probably 2 weeks on Amazon.
We'll put a link in the show notes. I want to just bring you back to something you were talking about earlier. You seem to be talking about living more in the present, and not dwelling on the past or perhaps anxiety about the future. How important do you think it is for, especially men, just to embrace what they've got now, and how does that help, do you think?
I'm screwed up, right? So I told you that. And so I've approached mindfulness meditation with the same zealous that I do everything. So for probably 18 years, every single morning, I get up before I head to work and close my eyes and just see what's inside. What is my body telling me? What are my emotions telling me? What kind of thoughts do I have swirling around in my brain? And I spend maybe 10 minutes every single day. that really helps me be present. And, you're talking about gratitude. I really think it's one of the keys to the kingdom. I have so much to be grateful for. I'm grateful for this conversation with you. I'm grateful for the work that you do to help men talk openly. I'm grateful for my dog that is wanting to go outside as soon as I can. So there's so much to be grateful for. Uh, it, so anyway, that to me is one of the keys to the kingdom and really helps presence me.
And I think you talked about kind of wanting a revolution for men. So, what I think you said you were still figuring out what that means, but what does that mean? What does that stir in you?
We've talked today about the story I told you about the attorney. The 95% of all mass shootings, in the United States, we have a huge problem with guns and killing others. 95% to 98% of all people who do mass shootings are men. About 60% are white men. It's awful. And I really think, if you study mass shooters, he was a quiet guy. He kept to himself. He didn't talk. We need to create, albeit a quiet revolution. Men, in my hope, my hope is that men start to talk. I don't care if it's with a mate over a pint or a men's group or the work that you're doing and other men are doing to we have to change this. We have to change it. And that's going to take a revolution. And if every listener can take that on and just maybe talk occasionally with another mate about something that's troubling them, we can change the world, Philip.
So someone listening to this today who's, not very aware that they're not really honest with themselves. They certainly don't talk to anyone. They may have all sorts of trauma or just stuff they don't know how to deal with. What is a step, one step they can take? Maybe they're sat listening to this. Maybe they're, in the car or listening to it at home or whatever. What's one thing they could do, tomorrow or today to start them on a different path? Because often that's the most difficult thing, isn't it? It's taking that first step and then trying to get some momentum.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think I have one of the simplest brains in the whole world. I really do. And to me, it's, if all the men listening look at their life, what is one thing that could be going even better? We all have that. All of us. And share that with one other person, preferably a man, but their wife even. What could be going, just one thing that could be going even better, and share it with one other person.
Well, Gary, thank you very much. Thanks for your insights, your honesty. Really fascinating discussion. Thank you so much. Thanks for coming on.
Really wonderful talking with you, Philip. And again, thank you so much for the work that you're doing.
Thank you for listening to the Midlife Men podcast with me, Philip Briscoe. You can find out more about Gary's book, Cracked Open, at the website crackedopenproject.com, and it will be available to buy on Amazon soon. To help raise the profile of the podcast, it really helps if you can review the show, and please share it with your networks. If you have a story to share, then do contact me through the website mid-lifemen.com.